Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm Steven from the Hills Maniacs, and to kick off this week of Halloween-related content on our channel, I'm going to be talking about some zombies today. More specifically, the Walking Dead franchise. So if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you know that this year they came out with two more spin-offs, I should say, of the Walking Dead franchise with Dead City, which focused on Maggie and Negan, and then Daryl Dixon, which focused on Daryl Dixon. So today I'm going to kind of be doing a sort of mini review of both of those shows because I haven't really talked about either one yet. And then at the end I will explain which one I felt was the better of the two. So let's get started. I'm going to start with Dead City because that was the first one that just came out like a few months ago or whatever. And the first thing I want to say is that I liked how the actors were able to get back into their roles, especially Jeffrey Dean Morgan. Like, every time I see him in anything else now, all I picture is him as Negan from The Walking Dead. And I'm sure a lot of people can say that as well. I don't know, he just portrays that character really well, and I like that he was able to get back into playing that character. And the same goes for Lauren Cohen as well, playing Maggie. I feel like they just basically continued to play those roles from the series as if they had never left the series for a little. I mean, I know the series did just wrap up like last year or whatever, so it's not like they've been out of playing those characters for too long. I just still feel like it's been a while since they played those characters and finished filming and everything else. And I like that they were able to get back into those characters. And what I really loved about this show was how it continued to play off of that tension between Maggie and Negan. Like, she still does not trust Negan. She still hates him for what he did to not only her and her family, but also everyone that she's come to know over the years, like her group of friends that she's been with Rick Grimes and all of them. Because as you know, Negan killed a bunch of people in their group to assert his dominance and make them bow to him and that kind of thing back in, I think it was season 6 of The Walking Dead or whatever. That's when he first came in. And Maggie still has never forgiven him for that. And even when the group took in Negan eventually and he started helping them and sort of became their ally, she still didn't trust him at the end of the normal Walking Dead series. So I like that they just picked up on that and didn't just kind of like, okay, they're friends now, they don't hate each other. Like, they still continued with that dynamic. And that's what made it really worth watching, because we got to see a continuation of these two characters' stories, and even the villain of this series having ties to Negan and being a former associate of Negan's really played into that dynamic as well, because that's the whole reason that Maggie has to search for Negan in the first place, because this guy known as the Croat he wants to find Negan because Negan betrayed him or kicked him out of the group a long time ago and tried to kill him. And as we find out later on in this show, the Croat doesn't want to find Negan so that he can kill him or get revenge on him. It's actually so he can use Negan to be the leader of this faction that they have as rulers over New York City and stuff. So it's kind of like he realized how good Negan was at that role of being a leader, that he wanted him to do this. And of course Negan isn't going to want to do it, but I liked how they ended the series with him like having no choice essentially, whereas Maggie now has to either decide to rescue Negan or not. So everything about this show played off that tension between these two characters. And I like how they also made this show feel like it was a true continuation of the Walking Dead series, because like, I don't know, just the tone of it and how they filmed it and everything else, it still had that darker tone to it. The zombies, or the walkers I guess is what they're called in the show, they were still present, and they even introduced new variants of walkers, which they also did in the Daryl Dixon series. So I kind of like that as well. We're now getting this look from both of these shows and all these other spin-offs. We're getting a look at all these different types of walkers that we haven't seen even in the original series. I kind of wish, they would have introduced those in the series, but they can only do so much, I guess. I mean, they did have 11 seasons, but like a lot of the time, the walkers didn't seem like they were that prevalent in the story anymore. You know, they weren't being used. We didn't see walkers as often because it started to focus more on the character-driven stories and the everything going on with the characters fighting against each other rather than the zombies and stuff. So I like that they brought that back still and introduced us to these even more threatening variants of the walkers. Like that made it feel even more unique for both shows, I guess, but also mainly for this one in particular because it puts the characters in even more of a life-threatening situation, introducing these new types of walkers. I also like how this series focused on, or focused heavily on Negan's life, like before he basically had his redemption arc in The Walking Dead. Like it focused on how impactful he was as this cult leader that he was, that we got to see him as in The Walking Dead, where like he impacted a lot of different people's lives, even the people that sort of worked under him and stuff. There were some people that, I mean, we didn't really see it. I guess off screen he killed a sheriff or something and a group of people. So then this other like inspector guy is trying to track him down in this series as well. So that's like another character trying to go after Negan. So like everybody's after Negan, and I like that they incorporated that into the show and used it as like a way to drive the plot, because now Maggie has to make these decisions where she needs Negan to get her son back from the Croat. I guess I should have mentioned that earlier. If you haven't seen the series, basically the Croat kidnapped Maggie's son so that she would, because he wanted her to track down Negan because he knew that she knows where Negan is. So in order to get her to do that and to do his bidding and stuff to find Negan, he kidnapped her son Herschel. So that's the main thing that drives Maggie in this series. And now she has to, like, in a way, she has to both work with Negan but also lie to him in order to get him to help her find his son. Like, she knows what the Croat actually wants, that he's trying to find Negan, but she just twisted the story to make it seem like she came to Negan for help to track down his son because he knows the Croat. So you get these moments where Maggie is forced into situations where she either has to save Negan or sort of turn on him or whatever, but she knows she can't do that until she gets her son back. So I kind of like that she's conflicted on this show as well, just as she was in the series, in the Walking Dead series as well. She was conflicted about Negan and trusting him and everything else, and now she's still that way, as I mentioned earlier. I also enjoyed the setting of this series. It took us to New York City, which we haven't seen in the original Walking Dead series. I mean, both shows, you know, this one and Daryl Dixon did that. They took us to these new locations we haven't seen. I don't think we even saw that in Fear the Walking Dead or anything like that. So it's kind of these other locations that we haven't seen yet to show how they're impacted by the zombie outbreak and that kind of thing. And I like that it gave us a look into that as well, where like there's these other characters that the show introduces to us. How they were impacted by everything going on and how they've been surviving against the zombies. And of course there's other cult leaders and things like that out there running things just like Negan did, trying to survive as best they could or the only way they knew how. And I like that we got to get a look at that as well, and not just focus on Maggie and Negan the whole time and the original characters from the show, but also tie in these new characters that we'll probably never see again after these little spin-off series are finished. You know, like I don't think these characters are going to come into the main show if they were to do a season 12 or something, or cross the characters back over together or something of that nature. But I think introducing these new characters really opened up the world of The Walking Dead, not just in Dead City, but also in Daryl Dixon, and even I'm sure they'll introduce some new people in the Michonne and Rick spin-off series that's coming out next year, which I think is called The Ones Who Live. So I kind of like that they're continuing to branch out a little bit, show us different perspectives of the walkers and that kind of thing, and everything going on, how the whole world has been affected by this outbreak. So I appreciate that they're trying to sort of, branch out a little bit and introduce these new characters. So I feel like they did a really good job of continuing these characters' stories and building on the world of The Walking Dead. And I think even the cliffhanger ending that they did, where it kind of showed Maggie and Negan both have a choice to make now, because Negan was offered either to be killed or run this new faction, as I mentioned, or basically roll over New York City. And then Maggie is pressured by Herschel to rescue Negan because he doesn't feel it's right that she left him there to die, basically, or left him in the hands of the enemy so she could have Herschel back. So Herschel's kind of, sort of tearing at her heartstrings a little bit, like maybe you should rescue him or something. So now she has a choice as well. And I think the perfect way to sum all that up was the little parallel picture that they did, where they had both of their faces sort of as one. They had half of Negan's face on one half of the screen and half of Maggie's on the other, and they kind of like came together real, like perfectly, like a nice silhouette of each other, to show that they're, not only are they at contrast with each other, but they also have similar morals as well, in that they're both willing to do whatever they have to do, even if it's questionable, in order to succeed at whatever it is they're trying to do. And I kind of like that it showed the parallel between the two characters, especially to end it and go into season 2, and it leaves us wondering, like, what's going to happen next? Is Maggie going to go rescue Negan? Will Negan take on this job offer and be running New York City and that kind of thing? So you got a lot to look forward to with season 2 of Dead City. And now I'm going to talk about the other spin-off series, Daryl Dixon. This one, I don't know, I just didn't enjoy it as much. It felt really confusing and stuff. It was set in Paris, France, because somehow Daryl ended up in Paris, which we do find out in a later season that through flashbacks and stuff that he went to Maine after he left the Commonwealth at the end of the final season of The Walking Dead. And he ended up, I think he got kidnapped or something, ended up on a ship, and then he went overboard on the ship and ended up floating across the ocean until he ended up in Paris. It was this big, like, convoluted thing, and I feel like I didn't really like that, because I feel like they were just trying to force this new setting for The Walking Dead. Like, as I mentioned earlier, New York City, while it was a different location we haven't seen before, the plot actually made sense for why they were going there. Like, the Croat fled to there. That's where he ended up going after he left Negan and stuff. So he's been there all this time. So that kind of made sense to bring those characters to New York City to go after him. Whereas in the Daryl Dixon series, it just kind of felt forced almost. Like, they wanted to get Paris as a setting for The Walking Dead. So they're like, we'll have Daryl go there, And I just didn't really like the way that they had him end up there in Paris. And the fact that he, like, runs into nuns and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it just felt like all these different plot points were just really strange to me. Like, the whole premise of the show was him trying to get back home, but first he had to kind of do a series of side quests, essentially. Sort of like all these Disney Plus shows we keep seeing with, like, Marvel and Star Wars and stuff. The characters go on a series of side quests for 6 episodes until they reach their goal at the end, kind of thing. That's what this was, really. But he gets tied into this whole plot of, like, these nuns and stuff, and this kid they believe is the new messiah for the outbreak and stuff. Like, he's going to save humanity and that kind of thing. So they want Daryl to be his savior type of thing. And I don't know, it's just this really weird plot. I did still enjoy seeing Norman Reedus playing Daryl Dixon. And just like I said with, the characters from Dead City, I feel like he got right back into that character as well. Like, it's like he never left, really. Like, they continued his character. He still is that same the same Daryl Dixon we've seen from the series, where he doesn't really want to help anybody. Like, he's reluctant to help when he runs into strangers and stuff, because of all the trauma he's been throughout the whole original Walking Dead series, running into Negan's people and that sort of thing. And then, like, he knows what it's like to run into strangers and not know if they're good or bad, or if they're going to help him or hurt him or whatever. So it's like, they continued that in this series, and I also like that they had him in this sort of fish out of water scenario where he has to deal with these nuns and this kid and all that stuff that I mentioned earlier. But it just felt kind of weird how they got him there and why he was there. I feel like they could have just had a series maybe just set in Maine, like when he went there looking for, I forget exactly what he was looking for at the end of season 11, but I think he went out to look for Rick and Michonne or whatever, but I can't quite remember. But I feel like maybe the series should have focused on that more. And especially after seeing the season finale, we know that season 2 is going to be called Daryl Dixon, the Book of Carol, because Carol is returning in that series and she's going to look for Daryl. And I guess from the trailer for that series, she does find Daryl, so that kind of ruins the whole like premise of the series. Like, why am I going to watch it now if she's already found him? But I feel like they could have just made that maybe the whole premise of this first show, of this first season of Daryl Dixon was he's in Maine, he gets captured or whatever, and then he has to fight a new group of whoever, and then at the end we see that Carol comes to look for him, and then we get to see things from her perspective in season 2 or something. It just felt weird having it set in Paris like that. So that being said, I've kind of already said it, but I thought Dead City was the better of the two shows. I don't know how I'm going to feel about The Ones Who Live, which is the Rick and Michonne spinoff. I just feel like Dead City had that more darker tone, which is more akin to what the original Walking Dead series had, where this one was, while it was beautiful with its like music and the scenery and everything else and all these locations from Paris and that sort of thing, I think they did a nice job with all of that. I just feel like Dead City felt more like Walking Dead than the Daryl Dixon series did. So there you go, guys. Those were my thoughts on both of these Walking Dead spin-off series. I'd love to know what you guys thought of either of these series down in the comments. What do you think is going to happen in season 2, stuff like that. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead, let me know all that. Which of these characters was your favorite so far, and what are you looking forward to with all the other spin-offs they might have planned from the Walking Dead universe as well. And also keep an eye out for everything else we got going on for this entire week. We've got a whole week of Halloween-related content. We're going to be playing some games and that sort of thing, so keep an eye out for all that if you're a fan of spooky season. And thank you for watching this video, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.